So, Om Jnana Tirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksurum Noitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The translation of this is, I who am standing in the darkness of ignorance with my eyes closed tight shut, do offer my respectful obeisance under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who has forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Sanjeev.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Me? Does everybody hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So in starting each of our classes on different themes and topics of Bhagavad Gita, we discuss how we're going to read a quote from Srila Prabhupada to start every class. This is a direct quote from Srila Prabhupada from the Bhagavad-Gita class that he himself gave in 1968 in Montreal. So it was very early in the movement. So this is a quote from Prabhupada, and it sort of sets the scale for the whole class. So here I'm quoting. So in this way, if we accept Bhagavad Gita as it is, but this special verse, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakta, is interpreted by Dr. Radhakrishnan, and he interprets it. It is not up to Krishna that we have to surrender. Now see, Prabhupada stated, Krishna says directly unto me, but Radhakrishnan says it is not to Krishna. In this way, in different books, you'll find different kinds of interpretations. Why? The Bhagavad Gita is a very popular book. And if one has got some nonsense idea, he wants to put forward that nonsense idea through Bhagavad Gita. This is going on. But if you want to taste Bhagavad Gita, then you'll relish and you'll get the benefit. By reading of Bhagavad Gita, or the essence of knowledge, quintessence of all Vedic literature, if you want to taste it, just read Bhagavad Gita as it is, and you will be benefited. So again, that was a class. Prabhupada, those are direct words from Prabhupada in 1968. So as it is, let's take Bhagavad Gita as it is. Let's take a closer look at this term. I'll show you. See the as it is. What does that mean? I have heard that there are over 600 editions of Bhagavad Gita by different authors. And from each of them, we get a different meaning. And from Prabhupada's quote, he was referring to a Dr. Krishna who wrote a version of Bhagavad Gita, right, or translation and purports. But he gave an indirect meaning. So the point being is that there's so much speculation and so many claims surrounding Bhagavad Gita. A few years back, there was a Hollywood movie made. The theme of that movie was golfing, and the entire movie was based on Bhagavad Gita. I saw that movie years ago, but I forget the details, but it was about golfing. Bhagavad Gita about golfing. But this Bhagavad Gita as it is different and special. Because this edition does not change the original intended meaning. Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, so he is actually the best person to explain the actual meaning. This edition of Bhagavad Gita accepts that Krishna is giving a direct explanation. He is not speaking allegorically, he's not speaking metaphorically, he's not speaking in riddles. we understand that Bhagavad Gita is a historical account of an actual event that took place here on planet Earth. You can go there. There actually was a great war that took place 5,000 years ago at the location of Kurikshetra, which isn't that far from the present city of Delhi. That's an interesting point. There was that war, Battle of Kurikshetra was the biggest war, greatest war in the history of this planet, for this Kali Yuga at least. Just a side note, there are two kinds of wars. There's the war where good versus evil, the divine and demoniac. And the Battle of Kurikshetra was definitely one of those special wars where Krishna was involved and the good versus evil. So there are two kinds of wars. The second kind of war is and those are very prevalent in our modern society. War is going on nonstop on planet Earth. Somewhere there's war going on. People are fighting and killing each other. And those wars are demons fighting demons. Whereas the Battle of Kurikshetra was a battle between good and evil, the good and evil. And as we look into the Vedic literatures, we'll see that there are many wars through the millennia of time that were fought with devotees fighting the demons. Good always overcomes evil in the end. So, as I'm speaking about this term as it is, as Krishna meant when he spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield 5,000 years ago. As it is, this is the theme. This is a very important and relevant theme to today's main topic, which we will proceed to explain. So, here's an important point to help us understand this. Every product comes with a manual showing how great that product is and how to deconstruct it in such a way that we understand everything about that product, the operational information, maintenance of it, safety features. If you buy a new car, you get a manual with great, breaking the car down into great detail. If you buy a new computer, there's always a manual. And the manual comes with the product, and the manual is made by the manufacturer. The manufacturer is the best person to tell you how that product works. So similarly, and this is an analogy, this material world comes with a manual. It's coming directly from the manufacturer, the Vedas. How does this material world work? How you can best use it? That's the nature of a manual. So the Vedas are a manual on how we can function in this world and best utilize the material world. The Vedas are vast and deep and covering every detail of creation. Initially, there was one Veda, and then that was for better understanding, it was divided into 4. And from those 4, it was expanded even further, the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, the Puranas, etc. And now, as the Hare Krishna movement especially focuses on the Bhagavad Purana and postgraduate to the Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Purana is the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So where to start? The best place to start is the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is understood to be a concise summary of the foundational building blocks for your spiritual journey. On closer study of Bhagavad Gita, we find that there are 5 building blocks or subjects that Krishna expounds on in Bhagavad Gita. So in Bhagavad Gita, there are over 700 slokas, and every one of them expands on one of these 5 topics. Furthermore, Krishna explains how these 5 topics interrelate with one another. So what are these 5 critically important topics or subjects or themes? Let's list them right now. Let's list them for starts. First of all, Bhagavad Gita gives detailed explanation about Ishvara. Ishvara or Bhagavan. Bhagavan or Bhagavad-Gita, the song of God. Ishvara is another Sanskrit word for God, the Supreme Personality of God. So one of the 5 topics is Ishvara. Secondly, Jiva. Jiva is the living entity. You, I, all the different beings are jivas. And the third topic is Prakriti, the material nature, dead matter. This material body is just made up of chemicals, and it comes to life with the presence of the jiva. So we need to understand how this material nature works. Bhagavad Gita goes into detail about that. The fourth topic that we can list that's described and explained in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna is Kala, or the time factor. And number 5, the 5 topics. The 5th topic is karma, the law of action and reaction. So these are the 5 topics that we're going to be covered in this course. Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. The Vedas are vast. And our Gaudiya Sampradaya lineage has so much supporting and postgraduate literature. As I've already explained, there are so many, the Upanishads, Vedanta, Puranas, etc. And there's so much more than those literatures written by the acharyas, by our gurus. So much knowledge it takes us deep into esoteric and profound realms. So all this can be understood in relationship to the 5 topics explained by Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield. As you read and study these literatures, especially Srila Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will see in Srila Prabhupada's purports that there is constant reference to Bhagavad Gita. Almost every purport makes reference to a relevant sloka in the Bhagavad Gita. So if this introductory course accomplishes nothing else, you should at least go away with a solid understanding of these 5 subjects, which in turn create the spiritual context and framework for your entire life. Krishna is not only instructing Arjuna, he is instructing all of us. We can identify with Arjuna. The dilemma, the confusion, the challenges of Arjuna on that battlefield, and the politics and circumstances that led up to that war are the same challenges and dilemmas that all of us face in life, in our own lives. So the first topic, as we mentioned, was Ishvara. And the Ishvara is usually the topic we begin with. So we need to understand Krishna, who Krishna is, the definition of God. Who is God? What is God? Define God. The meaning of the word God. The absolute truth, personality of Godhead. How can we understand that? Actually, the word God is not, it's like a post or a position or a seat. For example, the President of the United States, that's a position, it's a post. And different people occupy that post at different times. So the post of God, is occupied by a particular person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So as it is, now becomes relevant. We want to know how Krishna himself describes himself. We want Krishna's version, not some Hollywood version or some Mayavadi version. What is Mayavad? Well, at this point, we introduce the topic or the idea that there are basically two ways of interpreting the Vedas. Or if you will, there are two schools of thought based on Vedic knowledge. The Hare Krishna movement is solidly positioned as a Vaishnava Sampradaya, as opposed to Mayavad. The Hare Krishna movement is solidly 100% Vaishnava, and furthermore, 100% it rejects the Mayavad conception. We need to, this is a meditation that will go throughout your life, and it's a topic that arises many times. Vaishnavism versus the Mayavad conception. The Hare Krishna movement traces its roots all the way back to Krishna himself. And in this way, the knowledge has been passed down from master to disciple to the present day. There are actually 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas or lineages, and our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya is one of them. All Vaishnavas accept the direct meaning of Krishna's words, or Bhagavad-Gita as it is. The Hare Krishna movement is unique, especially in the West, because of this. All the yoga groups and Hindu associations in the West are espousing one version or another of the Mayavad conception. Mayavadis do not accept the direct meaning of Bhagavad Gita. They attribute indirect meanings to Krishna's direct statements. There are many verses and slokas in the Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna directly states his supreme position, and furthermore, he goes into detail describing his transcendental qualities and transcendental nature as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you make reference to the outline, the class outline in the website, there are many examples of verses, or some examples from the Bhagavad Gita of such verses. I strongly encourage you to refer to them, read them over in your outside of class time, meditate on them, and try to understand them. They're listed. Some of the main ones are listed right there on the website. Krishna, the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why is understanding this differentiation between Vaishnavism and Mayavad important? There are multiple reasons, and books have been written on the topic. But I'll give you one reason. Bhakti, or love. Bhakti means love, devotional service. These classes these classes are trying to introduce us to the concept of Bhakti Yoga. And sometimes it's referred to as the science of Bhakti, or the science of love. In the Mayavad conception, there can be no love. Bhakti or love happens when there are two living entities, two people. Love does not happen in a vacuum. People, two separate living entities interact in a loving relationship. Love happens in an environment of freedom. Love cannot be forced or suppressed. The ultimate loving relationship is the relationship between Krishna and his devotee. So these points lead to it. These are points that can be expanded on greatly. I'm trying to make a few concise points. These points lead to this discussion on Bhakti, the two people in relationship create love. These points lead to a discussion on the subject of free will. You have to understand free will in this context. Love or Bhakti has no meaning if there is no free will. We are free to choose to love Krishna or not. If not, if you choose not to love Krishna, well, no problem. Krishna is not attached. He has created this material world. Is everybody hearing okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So there was something happened. So Krishna has created the material world just for such people. People who don't want to serve him. Krishna created the material world to play out so that they can play out their choices. You can live in the material world your entire life and never think about Krishna. You can go through many lifetimes for that matter. But, and this is an important but, keep in mind, with freedom of choice comes responsibility. There are consequences. And this in turn and this discussion on free will in turn leads into the study of karma, another one of the topics, main subjects. Karma means consequences, so action, reaction, cause and effect. Understanding karma is the subject explored in great detail in Bhagavad-Gita. It is one of the 5 major topics in Bhagavad-Gita. And an in-depth exploration of karma will take place in one of our future classes. So we need to say a little more about the Mayavad conception. Whereas the Vaishnavas accept the direct meaning of Krishna's words, Mayavadis will interpret in an indirect way. When Krishna says repeatedly, he is the ultimate truth, the supreme absolute truth, the cause of all causes, Mayavadis will say Krishna is a manifestation of impersonal, all-pervading Brahman. Everything, including Krishna, comes from an impersonal source of everything. And the person, Krishna, who appeared on the planet 5,000 years ago, is a manifestation of that impersonal, all-pervading, impersonal Brahman, which is called Brahman or Brahma Jyoti. However, that is not the direct meaning of Krishna's statements in Bhagavad Gita, that actually the impersonal Brahman is coming from Krishna in a similar way that the sunshine is coming from the sun planet. The sun planet and the sunshine are one and the same and simultaneously different, but they go together. But the all-pervading sunshine is coming from the planet. Similarly, the all-pervading energy of the Lord, both material and spiritual, is coming from Krishna, the person, Krishna. That is the direct statement of Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita. So this Mayavad conception negates individuality, it negates personality, and it also negates variety and diversity. Imagine such an existence. Diversity and variety are the spice of life. And we become very bored very quickly if there's no other people involved in our life. And if you're in an empty room with no furniture, no photographs, no pictures, no artwork, no lighting, you won't be very satisfied to stay there for very long. So that this is an important point, that the diversity and variegatedness of this world is certainly problematic. It causes suffering and difficulties and problems. But the Bhagavad Gita explains that this world, this material world that we're experiencing in this lifetime, is but actually a perverted reflection. It's a reflection, described as a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, or the spiritual dimension. The variegatedness of this world and the relationships in this world are seen as a source of suffering and misery for so many people. And therefore the tendency is towards the Mayavad conception. In other words, if we eliminate personality, eliminate individuality, eliminate diversity, and you eliminate, then you can eliminate suffering. And it's actually possible. The Vedas explain how this is possible, but it's not a very high level of spiritual realization, and it's very temporary. And if we achieve that impersonal existence, free from suffering, at a certain point, our desire, the desire of the soul to serve and to love and to interact with other people, brings us back, forces us to come back into the material world. Whereas Krishna consciousness, the science of Bhakti Yoga, shows us how we can, instead of coming back into the material world, we can go to the spiritual world. That we're back to home, back to Godhead. That's where we actually belong as spirit souls, as jivas. So temporarily we may achieve a state of peace of mind in this world, or the next for that matter, but something, and that temporary liberation is, there's a Sanskrit word called moksha, means liberation from birth and death. But it's temporary, because the nature of the soul is to serve, to be active, to experience in so many different ways. So we need the science of Bhakti Yoga, as taught by Srila Prabhupada, teaches how by Krishna, the process of Krishna consciousness, we can go back to that spiritual world, which is full of variegatedness, full of pure devotees, full of all kinds of big activities, and they go on eternally without any interruption by birth, death, old age, or disease. So it is our nature to be active, and it is in our nature to love. In the absence of that, it's very boring. Life becomes boring. So these points are really important to understand in the context of understanding Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I haven't spoken directly about the specific verses in the Bhagavad Gita that that are referred to that directly address Ishvara, because I wanted to create this context of why it's important to understand the importance of Krishna and who is Krishna and his nature. There's so many verses that you can study on and read on your own time in your homework. But I wanted to use this time especially to explain this Mayavad Vaishnav conception, the two schools of thought that come from the Vedas. And in this way, we'll be able to understand who is Krishna. Without that proper understanding, very quickly, our realizations will degenerate into a Mayavad conception. And that's very prevalent in the world today. That Mayavad conception is prevalent. So many different groups are following these Mayavad teachings. In the West, we've seen so many different groups with that espouse those Mayavad conceptions. But we as devotees of Krishna understand that that is not the correct understanding. So from this understanding of Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can move on to understand the nature of the living entity, the Jiva Soul, which is the second topic of those 5 topics. How the Jiva Soul relates to the Supreme Soul. There's Jiva, another word for Jiva is Atma. So there's Atma and Paramatma. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he is the Paramatma. That's another term that comes up in the Bhagavad Gita. You'll have to learn that. So the ultimate spiritual realm is not some impersonal energy that we can't, that has no variety. And Bhagavad Gita again explains this in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We see verses that explain how this material world is likened to a banyan tree, an upside down banyan tree with the roots upwards and the branches down. That you can go to the 15th chapter and see that verse. And Prabhupada gives a long verse, purport to explain it. So the material world is like an upside down banyan tree. You might initially have a challenge on just trying to visualize that, but all of you have had the experience, even here in Sharanagati, on a calm day, when you go by the lake in Sharanagati, the mountains and the forests are all reflected on the lake, but it's upside down. The leaves are down and the roots are up. So the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Everything that we see and experience in the material world has a spiritual counterpart. The relationships of this world have a pure form in the spiritual world. The variety and variegatedness and personalities, etc., of the spiritual world are not subject to the laws of material nature. They're not subject to karma. They're not subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. In the spiritual realm, the soul is free to serve and to love Krishna eternally, in the absence of birth, death, old age, and disease. So we need to cultivate this knowledge. We've forgotten Krishna, and as we remember him and learn more about him, then our love for him can increase. So a further point I would like to make about this process, the study process that we're undertaking. It's not, we're trying to study the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and so on. It's not exactly an intellectual exercise. We should approach this reading of Bhagavad Gita and the other literatures in so doing. We should approach it as an act of devotion, as in a sense of prayer and a glorification of Krishna. It's not meant to be an intellectual exercise. We're not trying to see how many Vedic scholars we can produce in the Hare Krishna movement. We want to expand the love for Krishna and the service to Krishna. That is the Hare Krishna movement. That is Prabhupada's foremost desire. And we can achieve that through the practice of Krishna consciousness. So those are some of the points that I wanted to make in this class without going into detail about the many verses that are listed. I don't have a copy of the plan. Oh, here we go. So some of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, if you go to the outline on the website, you will see a number of verses in the Bhagavad Gita that should be read. For example, in the 10th chapter, verses or slokas 12 and 13, and Bhagavad Gita 9th chapter, sloka 18. You can see those references on the website. And they will go into, and by reading those slokas, you'll be hearing Krishna describe himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'm not sure what else I can say to add to that. I'd like to maybe open it up for some discussion. Would anyone like to raise some questions or discuss?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Challenge me.
Oh, no, Prabhu.
Hey, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My humble obeisance.
Are you Raja from?
Yes, Prabhu, salutes to you. Thank you. I am from Red Deer.
You're in Red Deer, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Have you met this other lady in the class, Larissa? She lives in Red Deer also.
No, we live in Calgary.
Two people in Red Deer are taking.
No, she's in Calgary, Prabhuji.
I'm in Calgary.
Oh, she's in Calgary. Larissa's in Calgary?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I know.
But there
I
are
know.
some other nice devotees in Red Deer.
Yeah, I know Russian couple in
Hmm?
Red Deer. I know some Russian couple.
Yeah, there's a Russian
Yes,
family in
yes.
Red Deer.
I-
Yeah. You know them?
Are they
Okay.
practicing devotees, Mataji?
Okay. So Raja Prabhu, you had a question? Did you have
Yes,
a question?
Prabhuji. I have a question and a comment.
Raja?
Prabhuji, like I was reading these
Okay.
things, and it says Krishna is Sachidanand. He's eternal and full of knowledge and full of bliss. And we are part and parcel of Krishna.
Sachidananda Vigraha.
Yes,
I'm
Prabhuji.
sorry?
So, but we are
Go
not
ahead, I did.
full of knowledge. We are stupid. Like, so how come?
Okay. Well, we can answer that question. We can respond to that question in different ways. And the Bhagavad Gita certainly explains and answers that question if you study Bhagavad Gita. But the living entity, the Jiva, which we'll discuss in more detail in a future class, the next class, but the Jiva is has the same quality as Krishna, but not the same quantity. So the Krishna, the living entity, Jiva, has all the qualities of Krishna, but in minute form. So as a minute Jiva soul, the tendency is to be covered over. And with the free will, which we talked about briefly, the free will gives us the opportunity to choose to make choices that are not in relationship to Krishna. We come into in the material world, we come under the influence of the three modes of material nature, the three Gunas, and they are described in great detail again in Bhagavad-Gita, and we'll get to that in a future
Satguna,
class.
Rajaguna, Tamas. Yeah.
So we have the tendency to be covered. When the material energy covers the soul, we forget Krishna. That's called Maya. That Krishna does that on purpose. He puts us in this material world and gives us the opportunity, the choice to forget Krishna. So, and we can forget him for an entire lifetime, for many lifetimes, and we can choose at a certain point that to decide, choose to go back to Krishna and start serving Krishna again. So this Krishna consciousness movement is trying to encourage people to remember your original nature, understand how you're related to Krishna, God, and take up the process of Krishna consciousness so you can go back to the real world, the real home of the soul with Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So
Prabhuji, one more nice,
you have to learn it.
one nice
Is
thing
that
that
a helpful?
sorry, there is a little bit.
You can share
gap.
your realization. So I'd like to hear your realization.
So there is a little lag for this internet connection, I think also. So Prabhuji, I was actually reading about Varahadev today because today is appearance day of Varahadev.
Varahadev.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I didn't check my time. Thanks for reminding me.
Today is Prabhuji appearance day of Varahadev, one of the avatars of Krishna.
Yes.
So Varaha was appeared as a hog.
I'm sorry?
Varahadev was appeared as a hog and he saved the planet Earth. He took the planet Earth out from the water.
Yes.
When Hiranyakashipu threw the earth right deep into the water in the ocean.
Yes. What is do you have a question?
No, I have a very nice comment about Bhagavatam. So I was reading why God, personality of God had took a form of a hog, right? Why? So I was questioning and I actually go and read it. So today the science has discovered that hog has about, I don't know, 200 times more powerful nose, a smelling power than the dog even. And can you imagine in Bhagavatam,
really?
like Bhagavatam, thousands of years ago, Paramatma, like Krishna, took the form of hog just to find the earth because he has a nice smell so he can find the earth. So this is amazing. This is a slap in the face of the science who discovered today that hog has a nice smell. But we in Bhagavatam got this thousands of years ago. This is amazing.
It is amazing. I wasn't aware of that point about the hog's smelling ability.
Yes, Prabhuji.
It's an amazing pastime. The pastime of Varaha Rupa is.
And we were relating this to Srila Prabhupada, how he found a few people in that slum very initially in New York because he has qualities of God. So he smelled those people actually, and they found a foundation of ISKCON, which is today, we are all here. So it is so beautiful.
Well, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't.
I think this thought should be put in the books because this is amazing. Because if you Google today and you Google the smelling power of a hog, it is way powerful than dogs which are being used in airports. So this tells you something what our gods are able to do thousands of years ago, not hundreds or like this is way before when Bhagavad-Gita was being told. Like I think that was the third avatar. The Varaha avatar was the third one, because every avatar has a particular condition. Because when Matsya avatar came, the fish avatar, that was to save Manu, and then when the Kurkurma avatar came, that was because the Kurikshetra is so hard, so the mountain can be churned on the top of the Kurikshetra. So I was continue thinking, why this Varavatar? What does a hog has to do? But this explains you. It is so beautiful.
Yes.
Can I make a comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Oh,
Yes, Prabhu,
Baba,
please.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol?
Go ahead, Baba.
When
Go
Prabhuji
ahead.
was saying that, it reminded me of the purpose of Lord Chaitanya, that he came to deliver the most fallen. So Varaha, in the same sense, dove into the ocean to deliver the most fallen. Similar. It's just his nature.
Yeah.
And he had to take
Yeah,
that form in order to do that task.
Yes, Prabhuji. Well said, Prabhu.
I would like to add something also from my perspective. So Varaha is one of my favorite incarnations. Dasavatar, described in the second canto of Bhagavatam. And as you read through the pastime, the very last verse and purport of the chapter on Varaha, Prabhupada gives a very nice purport and gives some insight. He explains how Hiranyaksha was a big, powerful demon.
Very powerful.
And he was going throughout the Earth planet and the universe and sourcing gold. He was very captivated by the power of gold.
He was
so
form of the Jaya Vijay,
gold.
Prabhu, right? He was the ex-Jaya Vijay. He was the like ex-Jaya or Vijay, one of those. Like the doorkeepers of Vishnu itself.
Yes.
Oh, Hiranyaksha, yeah.
Yes,
Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu were brothers who had they became powerful demons in this world because they were devotees actually, but they were cursed to
Three
take
times,
three births in the material.
Right.
So Hiranyaksha, he was acquiring gold throughout the universe. And in order to get gold, they had to go down into the earth, mine it into the earth planet. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, and some of our listeners tonight are from Alberta, so this is relevant to Alberta.
Oil country.
Prabhupada explains that because Hiranyaksha disturbed the balance of the earth planet to such an extent, because he was burrowing into the earth to get gold. The earth planet was so disturbed that it fell out of its orbit. It dropped from its orbit and it fell down into the bottom of the universe. And again, going back to the Bhagavatam, the Vedas explain how the universe is actually half full of water, the Garbhodak ocean. All the planetary systems are above the ocean. But the Earth planet was orbiting in its orbit, and as a result of Hiranyaksha's demoniac greed, the Earth planet became so disturbed that imbalanced. The word balance, it fell out of the orbit and it sunk into the ocean, and it sunk all the way to the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean, to the bottom of the universe, where there's what they call cosmic mud. The cosmic mud at the bottom of the ocean. The Earth planet fell into it. And Krishna had to incarnate as a boar with the big snout. So he incarnated as a boar to come down and pick up the Earth planet and take it back and put it back in orbit. So Srila Prabhupada, in that same purport, he explains, and this is where we come to the Alberta relevance. Prabhupada explains how that the imbalance created by Hiranyaksha is similarly happening again on planet Earth because of the greed of demoniac people burrowing and drilling deep into the earth, Mother Earth, to extract oil. The entire planet of the Earth planet is functioning now. The economy and people's lifestyle is so dependent on that oil that is being drawn from deep in the Earth's planet. And Prabhupada explains in that purport, it's creating such an imbalance in the world, similar to the imbalance that Hiranyaksha created by extracting gold. Interesting point. So you can share that with all your friends in the oil industry in Alberta. Tell them that story.
You are putting me in trouble, Prabhuji.
Well, this requires courageous preaching. You have to preach courageous.
I'll tell them you guys are present demons, right? Demons of today.
So
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
I read that purport from Prabhupada. It was very nice purport, actually.
Yeah.
Prabhupada is something. He's just right there. Boom. How you call it? Soft as a rose and thunderbolt as hard as thunderbolt. So
Yeah, that pastime of Viraha has so many references to Bhagavad Gita. The concept, it's a good example of karma, action and reaction. The reaction of taking gold out of the planet causes the earth, causes a big disturbance. So we have to learn how, this is an environmental lesson. We started out as having this class as a Bhagavad Gita class, but it's now becoming a class on environmentalism. So action and reaction. When we draw oil from the Earth planet, we're actually creating a bad reaction, a karmic reaction that is going to create suffering in the world.
yes, thank you, Prabhupada.
I have a question.
Thanks for bringing that up. I forgot. I didn't even realize it was Viraha's appearance day today.
Today was, and that was your
Thank you.
favorite.
I have a question, Bala
So-
Krishna Prabhu. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Um,
Go ahead.
Can you explain Mayavadi conception? You talked about the Mayavadi conception of idea in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What do you mean by Mayavadi conception? What does that mean?
The Mayavadi conception, they understand that Krishna is a manifestation of the impersonal Brahman, that Brahman is superior to the person. Just like you could say the sunshine is superior to the sun planet, but actually the sun planet is the source of the sunshine. Similarly, the Mayavad conception understands that Brahman is the source of Krishna. But our Vaishnava conception, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, Krishna's direct words are that the impersonal Brahman, it has its source in Krishna, the person. And when that person, Krishna, comes to planet Earth, like he did 5,000 years ago and spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield, that was the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything emanates from him. And there's verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Jasya, now it slips my mind, but one who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna's form and personality understands correctly that everything comes from the person, Krishna. Everything comes from that person. And the Brahman is coming from him just like the sunshine comes from the sun planet. Does that make sense? Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It does. So why?
Well, I thought this context
Srila Prabhupada talks
was
about
more. Go ahead.
Srila Prabhupada
I'm
often
sorry,
talks
something
about
I have to ask.
how the Mayavadi conception is dangerous. Why is that? Why is it dangerous? I mean, the Brahman is part of Krishna, so where is the danger in the Mayavadi
The
conception?
danger is that when we, okay, so if we spoke about free will. So if free will, if we choose the desire to serve or the desire to be separate from Krishna, the choice to choose not to serve Krishna, the choice, it's actually motivated by a desire, an innate desire of the soul to be Krishna, to be like Krishna. So sometimes in Mayavadi discussions, you'll hear the terms like we're all God, we're all one. When you become liberated, you become part of God, or you become God. These are incorrect misconceptions that are not verified by the Bhagavad-Gita, by Krishna himself. So the danger
Okay.
is that if we become attached to the Mayavad conception, one, there's a couple of problems. We may achieve that state of liberation, which is temporary, because it doesn't, it's not complete. And the other danger is that we're trying to be God. The Mayavad conception is, and that's considered by Vaishnavas as the greatest offense to Krishna. To try and be like God, to be God, or to be, that's dangerous. That's dangerous for our spiritual life, our bhakti, lots
Okay.
of deeds. The seed of the devotional creeper that's growing in our heart can be destroyed by thinking that we're God, because we're not God. We'll never be God. We can only be the servant of God. We can serve God, but we can't be God. That's one way of explaining it.
Okay, thank
Maybe
you
you
very
can add
much,
to that.
Ramakrishna Prabhu. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, who's that came on the screen? Oh, that's Devata, Hare Krishna Devata. And Bhava, thank you for coming. Is there any further questions or discussion? Should we end now, perhaps?
Yes, Prabhu, one more thing I was reading about Mayavad, because they say we can be one with Lord. This is very dangerous, because our nature is to serve God. And if we become one with God, it's impossible to serve God. It's as simple.
No. That's exactly right. That's our nature. Yeah, that's a very good point. Excellent.
Because if we and God are together, so how are you serving God? There is no way. So there is no way we want to connect. We want to go to God like that. We are always servant, and we want his devotional service, loving devotional service. So yeah, their concept is completely wrong.
Right.
Thank you.
Your
Can I
point is
say
well
something?
taken. And it refers back, I was speaking previously about the nature of bhakti. If there's no, bhakti requires two people. Bhakti, or devotional service, love is expressed in action. So if you love somebody, you naturally want to serve them. And that's a spontaneous and free choice that happens between two people. But in the Mayavad conception, when you enter, if you go into the Brahman, enter Brahman, there's no individuality, no personality, no variegatedness. There's no opportunity for a loving exchange. And that is very much a part of our nature. We can't live without love and without service. So it's a temporary condition. We may temporarily achieve a state of consciousness where we don't feel suffering from birth, death, old age, and disease. But if we don't have a positive experience, we can't replace, we have to replace that experience of the material world with a positive spiritual experience. Does that follow? Does that make sense? And that is the actual nature of the material, the spiritual world. The spiritual world is full of variegatedness and variety and people and Krishna. And everybody's happy serving, increasingly happy serving. Chant Hare Krishna, chant and be happy. Forever, forever. Eternally. Eternity is a very difficult concept for us to understand, because in this conditioned state in this world, everything we've ever experienced through our senses and intellectual and mental capacity, everything we see and experience is temporary, has a beginning and an end. Relationships have a beginning and an end. In the spiritual world, the difference is there's no birth, death, old age, or disease. These are the things that get in the way of eternal bliss, eternal happiness. In the spiritual world, we're not restrained or constrained by these factors of the material world. And that's our natural condition, the natural, pure, healthy, spiritual condition of the soul, the spiritual world, in relationship to Krishna. So, thank you for participating in the class and bringing forward your ideas. I hope you're able to attend the other future classes as well. And I hope you get to visit Sharanagati sometime soon.
Before we end,
Okay.
I would just like to remind everybody to send in their homework. And
Oh, yes.
I'm
Homework.
sure all of you have done your homework.
We expect you to do at least
But
10 hours.
not
of homework.
everybody has sent it in. It's actually a very wonderful thing. It's not homework like when you were in school and it was boring. This is a homework where you can share your realizations of what you're reading. And we, either myself or Damodar or Balakrishna Prabhu, can reciprocate with you. So please make sure that you send in your homework. Otherwise, it's kind of a one-way street. We need your feedback. Okay,
And
that's all I
also
wanted
one
to
of the items in the homework that we list every week with our class outline is a recommended lecture by Srila Prabhupada. And today's recommended lecture is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 5. It's listed right there on the work page on the website. Please find
you
time
go
to
to-
listen to that. Go ahead.
If you go
Please
to the
find time
website, Introduction to Bhakti, and you click on Introduction to Bhakti, it'll open up to a page where there's a registration form. If you go below the registration form, you will see the pictures of 3 books, Bhagavad-Gita, Sri Upanishad, Nectar of Devotion. So you click on Bhagavad-Gita and all the resources are there. And those lectures are right there in the resources. So all you need to do is click on the lecture and you will be able to access that lecture. It's very, very easy.
listen to.
And actually, while I was cooking today, I was listening to the lecture for this, Prabhupada's lecture for this class, and it's ecstatic. Don't miss it. It's really, really wonderful. And don't think that you have to sit there and do nothing when you listen to a lecture. In this day and age, we've always got to be busy. So listen to a lecture while you're driving, while you're cooking, while you're doing the boring dishes or whatever. It makes life a lot more interesting and transcendental. So please make
Good.
sure you do that.
Very
You'll love it.
good advice, excellent advice. So
I was
please
listening to
definitely listen to that lecture.
I was listening to the
Make sure you
lecture.
listen to that lecture.
I did, and I think
Sorry?
what I loved is at some point when Prabhupada says that, have you ever seen the birds early in the morning? You know, they just wake up and they're twittering and they're dancing and they're happy, and then at some point they'll go and look for food. And I'm thinking, we get up in the morning, we've got this huge burden on our head. We sleep, we're carrying so much burden on our head. I mean, the ease with which Prabhupada just explains everything with so much clarity and conviction is, he doesn't even think for a minute. It just flows so natural, and the examples you can relate to them, in some form to your life. He's always got these little examples, and that twittering of the bird made sense to me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go out and see the birds, and their behavior when they wake up in the morning. They have no worry at all, So yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Good. Anything else before we end? So let's I look forward to the class on Friday. I'll see you all on Friday. I don't think I'm giving the class, but I'll be there. All right, Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
to all.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Haribo.
Oh, man.
Oh, look at that beautiful picture.
Pardon?
Someone put a big, and here we
Oh,
go.
there it is.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.